Good morning. It's Thursday, August the 17th. You won't see this until Blackboard is open to you on Monday the 21st. But this is the welcome to you to SOCI 3311 online. I'm doing it this morning, this video on YouTube. When I got here this morning, Blackboard was up, but VoiceThread was not working. Ordinarily I use VoiceThread, which is, many of you may know this, video system within Blackboard. And maybe by next week we'll have VoiceThread back. It's what you see with VoiceThread is pretty much what you see with YouTube, except on my end it's more complicated YouTube because it's the logistics of getting it set up. Whereas with VoiceThread I can do it and then just post it. It's pretty straightforward. Anyway, this is the introduction one, and then I'll do a VoiceThread next week on homework on chapter 1 and on homework 1. Generally the routine will be in the early part of each week I'll do a VoiceThread on the concepts of the chapter in front of us, and then towards the end of the week a VoiceThread on the calculations of the homework for that chapter that's in front of us. So it'll be on average 2 VoiceThreads a week. You'll also find as we get into this that there'll be some old YouTube videos that I did, I don't know, I think it was fall of 2014, that are resources I posted out there on Blackboard. There may be a couple more that I'll post. I think they're 2014, fall 2014. But the calculations and measurements and statistics within statistics don't change. Not really, even the interpretations, the applications might change. But so they'll still be timely, and there'll be an additional resource for you. I've also posted on Blackboard a set of PowerPoints from by the author of the text, Healy, for each chapter, and I think it has, if I recall, has a summary, maybe a couple of pages or a couple of paragraphs of summary, and then a PowerPoint presentation on each chapter, which will be a resource for you as well as the text. And this is the text, Statistics, a Tool for Social Research. I guess I should say, maybe I did, welcome to 3311 Social Statistics. Pretty sure I said that. I always do we casual with these videos, right? This is kind of like sort of like our being in class together, walking in and having a conversation. Nothing real formal, more relaxed. I have posted the syllabus on Blackboard. I posted homework 1 on Blackboard, which is due I think on Tuesday the 29th. Homework will be posted on Blackboard on Thursday before the week of the chapter that we cover, and then we'll cover the chapter, and then the homework will be due the Tuesday after the week that we cover the chapter, something like that. You'll see how the sequence goes. So I'll give you plenty of chance to see the homework and then raise any questions that you might have during the week when we're doing presentations. I'm doing presentations of videos and stuff on the chapter in front of us. We don't really use discussion. I have to think about that. Discussion might be a good idea. Put a discussion board. I never have done it that way. Put a discussion board out there for to post questions. We have been doing it by email. A student has a question on something, sends it to me, and then I circulate it around to the students, post it out there in the Blackboard email system. Let me think about that for a couple of days, and maybe we will do a discussion. Not a required discussion, but just a place for somebody to say, hey, what does this mean? And then I can respond to it, and everybody can see my response. Okay, so this is the syllabus. By the way, my name is Steve Blanchard, and I'm in San Antonio. Some of you may not be in San Antonio. I'm in San Antonio, and it tells you up here, my office is MOI 203. My office hours are Monday, Wednesday, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., and Tuesdays, Thursdays, 8 a.m. To 9 a.m. or by appointment. To my phone numbers here. My email is on here, and this is the rule that I apply, which I hope will be helpful to you, and that is that if you need to get a hold of me on any issue related to statistics, or any issue for that matter, if you email me or call my office phone, because I use my iPhone where I can get into my email and tap into my office phone. If you email me or telephone me anytime between 5 in the morning and 9 o'clock at night, 7 days a week, I'll be back to you within 2 hours guaranteed. Okay? So if you've got a problem, if you have an issue with something you're trying to solve in statistics, you can email me or call my office phone knowing that I'll be back within 2 hours. It's convenient for you because you've got the issue in front of you and you don't want to have to wait for Blanchard 2 days to get back to you. And also for me, I don't want to, you're doing homework over the weekend and I come in on Monday morning, there's 15 questions in front of me, and it's just not an efficient way for us to engage one another. So when you've got something in front of you that you need to talk to me, let's engage right away. Call me or email me, and know when you do that I'll be back to you within 2 hours guaranteed. If I get that email or phone call between 5 in the morning and 9 o'clock at night, if you send me something at 9 o'clock at night, I might not get back to you till in the morning because I'll be 11 o'clock, right? But you get the general sense of it. If you send me something between 7 and 8 o'clock at night, I will get back to you before 9 o'clock. I usually crash somewhere around 9, 10 o'clock. So, but anyway, you can see there's some guarantee there that I'm available to you. All right. Now, we're doing social statistics. There's 4 kinds of statistics we're going to do, and we'll talk more about this as we go through it. We're going to do descriptive statistics, explanatory statistics, and predictive statistics, all within the category of social statistics, and we're going to do inferential statistics. Let me just use an example, a very common example. Maybe the reason why you are in college is that the income, we want to know a variable, something that varies is income. We don't all have the same income. Why does it vary? And that's a research question of interest to us as social scientists. So anyway, income varies, and so maybe that we think that one of the reasons why it varies, that it co-varies with education, such that as education goes up, income goes up. In other words, as education goes up, occupational opportunities improve, and associated with those improved occupational improvements is an increase in income. So if we say the income in terms of descriptive, what is the average income? How does it vary? That's a descriptive statistic. What's average education in the population? How does it vary? High income and low income, that's a descriptive statistic. But if we put the two together, where we're trying to explain income with education, then we have education as an explanatory variable. Then we're in explanatory statistics, where we're attempting to explain the variation in income by the variation in education. A lot more we'll talk about that as we go through the semester. And then maybe we want to predict, towards the end of the semester, maybe we want to predict income. So we'll go through some statistical procedures of how we can predict if income or education goes up by this much, how much more income can we predict will result from that increase in education. That would be predictive statistics. Now, inferential statistics is the situation where we draw down a sample from a population. We'll have a lot of conversation about this as we get into the semester. Maybe we want to know what the average income is in Houston. Well, knocking on all the doors in Houston is not going to be easy to do. How much income do you have? How much income do you have? How much income do you have? And sum all that up and divide by the population, we'd have the average income. That would be prohibitively expensive both in time and in money to knock. That's why we do the U.S. Census only once every 10 years. It's very expensive. But what we can do is we can do an inference. We can draw down a random sample, more about that later when we get to chapters 6 and 7. Draw down a random sample of, say, 1,000 individuals in Houston and ask those 1,000 people, what is your income, and then average the income across those 1,000 people. And then we would infer that had we asked the entire city of Houston, we would have come up with approximately the same answer that we came up with when we did that sample of 1,000. He's saying, geez, that's very mysterious. 1,000 represents 1,000,000. Well, you'll see how it works when we get to chapters 6, 7, 8, and that sort of thing. So there you have descriptive, the averages in income, the averages in education, explanatory, explaining income by education, predicting how much for each incremental increase in education can we predict would be the consequent incremental increase in income, and then drawing from a population to do an inference to get the average income in a city without having to knock on every door. Those are the 4 statistics that will be excuse me, I'll get a drink of water here, that we'll be doing over the course of the semester. And we don't leave any of them behind, because you'll see that the logical argument in statistics is to go from descriptive to explanatory to predictive within the umbrella or in the context of inferential. We'll talk more about that as we go. Descriptive can stand alone. We can talk about average income, average education, but we cannot do explanatory statistics. We cannot explain income or by education without first describing each one of those variables in terms of how they distribute within, how does education vary and how does income vary. The logic of that you'll see as we get into chapters 3 and 4, I believe. Okay? So what we're saying here is it's always the case, whether you're in practice or research, you descriptive, move to explanatory, move to predictive, and then if you're trying to say something about a large population, you would do that with a sample. In other words, you'd be making inferences. Now, the course is not just about calculations. More importantly than anything, it's about concepts, statistical concepts. The mathematical stuff of using a calculator and creating averages and things like that, those are important, absolutely. But more important to me, and I think you'll find in the world more important to you, is the concept. When to think about averages, when to think about standard deviations, when, for example, in explanatory statistics would you use analysis of variance versus a correlation. What would be the best situation where you'd use a predictive statistic? Is this a situation where you'd want to do inferential statistics or not? Those are conceptual questions that are far more important than the mathematical statistical calculation piece, because you will have software in front of you when you're out there in the world that will do the calculation. The trick will be, which statistical method do you use? What is the concept of your work that's driving your decision in terms of which statistic that you want? Once you get to the statistic of interest to you, some software will do the calculations for you. Now, in this course, we're not going to be using software. I'm going to make you do it by hand. Now, towards the end of the semester, when we get really complicated stuff, we'll be doing some stuff on using software. But we're going to crunch numbers the first half of the semester, where you use calculators, pencils, and papers and write it out. And I think that's the fundamental, very basic building blocks at the beginning of the semester, the first half of the semester. It's where those underlying fundamentals will begin to get embedded in your thought processes and will make you even sharper when you get to the point of later in the semester and in your future when you're doing statistics in software. A number of you will follow me in the spring into the next level of statistics, and that's all in a lab. It's all predictive, and it's all using software. Anyway, enough on that for now. Now, you might wonder, what's the point of statistics, right? I'm sure you're all taking this course because you've been waiting for years to take it. I say that not to push you around in any way. For some people, including me, when I first got into this years ago, when I was freshman, sophomore, junior in college, algebra was like a weird thing to me. I wanted to know how to go to a grocery store and pay for something and not get ripped off. I wanted to know how to make change correctly. All these things with X's and Y's and Z's and W's and all that kind of stuff just did not make sense to me. And but over the course of time, it did. And so I'm aware that you can be coming into this class a little bit on the uneasy side, and I'm not really sure that you want to do this, but you're finding that from your academic advisor that you have to do this. And but I think you'll find once you get into the course that you're far more capable of doing statistics than you ever imagined, and that it's far more interesting to you, statistics, than you ever imagined. Now, I'm making an assumption here because we're social scientists. I'm a sociologist. Some of you are at Wharton School of Social Services. Some of you are criminal justice, and some of you are other places in the university community. And you have an interest in trying to figure out human phenomena, and that's kind of a general way of saying it. But let me just take you back to the 19th century for a minute, and in the 1800s when statistics first began. Statistics has a word origin to status and to state. In the 19th century, what you're about to learn in social statistics became the language of the social reform movement of the 19th century. Now, maybe some of you know Charles Dickens' novels about what it was like to live in 19th century England. It was not pleasant. Nearly all of us, I'm sure, maybe all of us, are aware of the horrifically tragic income inequality in our own country. People with just an incredible disparity in terms of access to resources and income. We live, in a lot of ways, similarly to how it was in the 19th century. The social reform movement developed this idea of statistics in order to put numerical values, shall we say, to status of subpopulations. Let's say, for example, and I use this all the time because I work out in community health, and this illustration is something that we do out in community health all the time, and that is infant mortality. Children who die under the age of 1 year are defined as infants, and infant mortality is, as you can imagine, is particularly tragic. Much too soon, right? In the 19th century, the social reform movement was aware that in some subpopulations, infants were dying at much higher, seemed to be dying at greater numbers than in other subpopulations of London. And so they wanted to get their minds around what that was. And so they went into the history of the physical science methods, where there was measurement in terms of weight and volume and things like that. It took some of those mathematical and statistical concepts and began to apply them to the social phenomena of interest in infant mortality, for example, so that they could then say that if you took the numbers of infants who died in one subpopulation and divided that by the numbers of live births in that population and multiplied it times 1,000, you'd have a rate of death of infants. And you'll see how that works as we get into chapter 2 or 3. We'll talk about rates. So then, what they could see, in this population, the death rate was only 10 out of 1,000. Over here, the death rate was 111 out of 1,000. So then could begin to describe not only death, but could begin to differentiate into social context. Why is this group dying higher rate than this group? So that the social statistics that you are going to be learning this semester is a language of social reform movement. And I think they're all still in that business. I mean, as
students in the warden school and students in criminal justice, students in sociology and students in social science in general, were concerned about issues like that, issues of disadvantage, issue of advantage, and the consequences of disadvantage. Those things are still right in front of us every day of our lives. Statistics allows us to measurement, numerical values to those, and them from the standpoint of evidence, a way to compare. So that you can imagine the social reform movement if they were municipal government of London back in 1890 and said a lot of kids are dying here and a lot of kids are not dying, not so many kids over here. It would be hard to have that conversation with the municipal government to say resource of the group that's dying, that have a high number of deaths. But if you calculate into rates where you got some good comparison, where the municipal government would see how high that mortality rate is, then they might be forthcoming with some sort of resources with this all the time here in the community. Statistics is our evidence for programmatic development, evaluation, and results. Well enough, you'll see in the first couple of pages a much clearer way of describing what I said. Anyway, let's go on with there's homework assignments, one almost every week, every other week, just a week. We got a week of an exam and then a week of fall, Thanksgiving. But just about every week that classes meet, there's homework. So have to stay current. There are two exams, final exam. You'll see how they're scheduled. Be the means of investment on page 3. I pointed out the book, which is Healy. Might be available to you if you have any issues. I have it up here between the hours of attendance probably large to that. Attendance getting on time. Their work will be late and no exams will be not be skill and main let's see here. Let me talk some about academics that I'll worry about. To conform groups. In other words, it's on around 3 or 4 chapter 5. Sonnet, that's some of strong in area, some are not so strong, very able to. But what if you have a conversation